BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K. BSing with
Who?
BSing with
What?
BSing with Sean K.
Welcome to BSing with Sean K. I'm Sean Kneese, and on this show I talk with people living outside the box, pursuing their creative and intellectual passions. And today my guest is Paul McCartney. No, Patrick McCartney.
Of the
There you
Beatles.
Yeah. And he's
Cool.
he teaches improv at the Pit. He was my level 2 improv teacher, and he's also performs in improv house teams, and you teach a comedic acting class as well. And
Yeah, and a how to solo show class. Yeah. And I do private work for like corporate and one-on-one work with people in the corporate world. And well, you can go to www.patmccartney.com if you want to find out more about me. I'm an actor and an improviser and a writer and sometimes director. I just think of myself as like a theater artist.
so how did your interest in the arts develop?
It started when I was young because I was born and raised in New York City, in Manhattan. My dad is a writer, and my mom was a model for a while, and then she had me and my brother, and she still stayed very connected to the arts. So I grew up in one of those, apartments with a lot of books and culture and yeah, it was a very sort of New York City in the 70s and 80s upbringing. And I would go see like every Christmas my brother and I would go see one of the Neil Simon. He had these 3 plays, this trilogy of plays called first one was Brighton Beach Memoirs. The second one was Biloxi Blues. The one was Broadway Bound. We used to go every Christmas, my brother and I. We see that trilogy unfold. And I always liked acting. And then, of course, I grew up, admiring certain like Belushi and that type of approach to acting or performing. And so I moved to Chicago when I was 18.
So kind of slapstick, because I remember him in the Blues Brothers. That was Belushi and Animal House. Those are the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was like an actor, and he was loose. What I didn't know at the time was he was sort of an improvisatory actor. He was like wild. He also lived the kind of life I wanted to live for a while, which is wild and crazy and still be able to perform. And I liked being funny, and I liked funny people rather than I liked hanging out with actors. More so, let's say. So I moved to Chicago when I was like 18. A month later, I turned 19, and I found funny people that I wanted to be around and learn from. And there were some great ones there.
And so improv was a way to kind of perform, but without being, that wasn't exactly being an actor, but you could be around more comedians and people like that.
Well, I did both when I was in Chicago. Chicago's got a great theater scene, and improv wasn't so huge back then. So it was like I would improvise and I'd do a lot of plays, and I'd improvise and I'd do a lot of plays. But most of my friends were improv people.
So what got you interested in improv? Was it just the spontaneous, being more spontaneous, and did you think it would help with theater or help with acting?
Yeah, I mean, I found that it did. I found that I was surrounded by some incredible people, so I was always being challenged. I found that when I did it well, I did it really well. I found that there was something scary about it that I knew I wanted to overcome. And I would find moments where I overcame it, and then moments where I felt like I couldn't. So, but I knew I could. I just didn't know what the secret was. And it turns out there was no secret, except for a few things that I managed to do whenever I came back into improv, which was about 6 years ago. So I left for a long time and came back. But I did it for, about 10 years in Chicago. I joined the touring company in Second City where I met Ali from the Pit, the owner of the Pit, Ali Reza Faranakian. And we toured with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, Rachel Hamilton, and Bill Cott was our initial tour co. And then we had Dave Pompey, Rich Tellerico, wonderful people in that experience. So, well, that was like a while ago. And then I left Chicago, went to LA briefly, studied with a great teacher there, came back to New York, and that's when everybody I knew had started the first UCB space, which I helped start on 22nd Street. And all my friends were writing for Conan or SNL. So I was able to get a lot of work and improvise, and I started acting in the plays of Shira Piven, who was a director I still work with today. But she moved into a lot of TV and film.
Yeah, but is there a way? Is there a way to apply improv to scripted material? Did you ever find that?
I think so. I mean, it depends. I mean, some writers are very open to it. Otherwise, I think you can behave improvisationally within text if you're really allowing yourself to behave moment to moment and you really know your text. I think, really trusting that you can play off the other person and you know what you want and you're relaxed and you're actively listening and you allow yourself to say the words in whatever way they're going to be said, that would be, in my opinion, improvisational acting, as opposed to like a certain way of doing it every time.
So you just know the lines well enough where it's not memory anymore. It's like you're saying it as if you were actually saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With high stakes and playfulness and yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you get the line exactly right. It's if it's the overall meaning of the line.
Well, that depends on the writer. That depends on the writer.
Some are very particular about that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. They're like, don't mess up my words, and I find that aggravating as an improviser. So that's probably one of my, one thing I've taken away from improv that's probably not a great habit, which are different than conservatory training, but conservatory actors get intimidated by improv. So, if you could really learn your text well, you could do both. If you're a conservatory trained actor and you don't have much improv experience, improv is very scary.
Yeah, and improv isn't for you if you're like the writer you were describing, someone who just has a very narrow view of what they want, and because it's for more people that would be open to collaboration or other people's ideas. But I think that's how like a script or a play or a movie can get better, is if you take in other people's ideas and they make even with Blade Runner. I'm thinking of where he added in that one line about the tears from the rain, and I think in The Shining actually the "Here's Johnny" line was improvised, and Goodfellas too. Joe Pesci improvised that whole. What am I, a clown? Do I amuse you? That whole thing was improvised.
Yeah, those are three great examples, right? Yeah. Directors that were, directors I think a lot of them will leave an open take. I don't really know how it works for every director, but hopefully they leave. They trust their actors enough that the actors should know the material and the character, and you should really let the actor do the work. And a good actor can improvise within the imaginary circumstances, especially if they have a clear objective and a clear understanding of relationship. And I think it's
Yeah,
great.
they kind of
I
have to
guess,
put themselves in that world to be able to make the acting believable. And
yeah,
sometimes improvising a bit can help you do that.
yeah. And some writers are very particular. They want their words to be, and some are poets. You know, some just love the way they've written, and I imagine someone like Aaron Sorkin is not so open to improv, but he loves his. It feels like he loves the way he writes, and a lot of people like the way he writes. And there's a musicality like Shakespeare. You couldn't improvise. I think Tennessee Williams you probably shouldn't improvise. David Mamet you probably shouldn't improvise because there's structure and there's pauses built in, and there's very intentional stuff in there. You can't really you can't really can I curse on the show or no?
Yeah, yeah,
You can't really fuck around with because they're so intentional. The pauses, the ellipses, the interruptions, all that.
yeah. Because language kind of for a while was with Shakespeare. I know it was almost like language was kind of like an art form that people used. Like people went to go hear. I think they used to say they used to go hear a Shakespearean play rather than they go see one. But I don't know if that's
Yeah,
as much the case with newer writing. Well, also because a lot of writing is now film, and that's more not focusing on the dialogue. But I don't know. Newer plays, I guess, are still
I
dialogue.
don't know. I think it changed. When Brando came in the picture, and he was all about behavior. And you could watch a Brando movie with the sound off, and you knew what was going on, and you were still like interested because his inner life was so strong, and he was behaving. Suddenly, I don't know if dot. I had a great acting teacher tell me once that you should be able to turn the sound down on any movie, and if the acting is really good, you should be able to tell what's going on. That doesn't mean the writer. I don't dismiss the writer at all. My dad's a writer, and I'm a writer, and I love good writing. Um, and if I was doing a play, I'd probably leave. If I'm doing a play and the writer's there, I always find it intimidating because I want to be able to improvise. And being, the son of a writer, I always hesitate, and because I don't want to disrespect the writer.
Yeah, I guess you could kind of work with the writer on it and just like ask and say,
Hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully, some have written their words, in a way that they really wanted to be heard.
yeah. So what kind of writing projects are you working on or have worked on? Sketch comedy or
Yes, sketch comedy, and I've written some poetry, and I'm writing some screenplays right now, or at least trying to play. Quarantine's got us all wanting to create, 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 create. And I'm a pretty good writer. I'm just not a very disciplined writer. So I have some stuff I've been working on for a while, and just trying to get that discipline in me.
yeah, yeah. Well, I was actually revising a script I worked on a while ago, and actually I'm working on another comedy script with Eric, who was in the improv too. I took with you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, but it's similar to acting in a way, in some ways, writing, because you kind of have to get in the mind of the character. You have to get in the setting. Only you're putting it on paper. You're not in the scene.
Yeah, yeah. Which is why a lot of writers take my acting class because they want to feel what it's like to be in those shoes.
So comedic acting is the main kind you've explored and the main kind you teach. Have you tried with other styles as well, or?
Oh yeah, I teach it both. Um, we called it comedic acting before we went into. I mean, the pit called it that before we went into lockdown because it was a niche market, and I'm a actor, but I can do comedy. I don't really approach the two that much differently, except for sketch comedy. So I had to focus on sketch, and now it's developed into just a larger sort of scene study class with still a lot of sketches from SNL and stuff. It's a fun class.
Yeah.
Now it's called acting for the camera because we were, all struggling in the beginning to figure out how to work Zoom.
so
So when we come back, hopefully I'll just be teaching acting at advanced and beginner.
so do you see theater and improv, the pit, all that coming back, or do you think the
That's a
COVID?
great question.
Yeah, or did
I don't
COVID kind
know.
of shut all that down? I don't know.
I don't know. That's a tough one. I mean, it's really hard to tell. I'm hoping that it comes back in May in some form, at least a little bit. I mean, I'm sure there'll be outdoor stuff. Um, I've heard Broadway's the fall. I I don't know what this. Well, I think the pit's holding on. Hopefully the space on the west side will reopen, and I know the owner's doing his best to make sure that happens.
Yeah, yeah, but it's amazing they're still shutting places down and all that with the pandemic, because like there's not really much you could. Yeah,
I know it's a weird feeling to be a person in the theater and see other people start to go back to work, and but the one thing I do like is not starting up again. And even teaching, like I'm still teaching remotely.
it's not the
Which is,
same kind of experience.
well, it's actually been great because I'm working with students from all over the world, which is really cool. And I was very cynical about it in the beginning, but less so now. I love it. I'm actually really enjoying it.
Yeah, I guess it's is there something with the in person class that's missing, or you feel like it's the same experience over Zoom?
Yeah, I mean body language. You can't read body language. A lot of environment work seems to have disappeared. But we've made it work. We've made it work. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I
been
went.
positive. It's been a positive, and I've been very lucky to be able to do it. I imagine students will drop off once the messages were open, except we're not. You know, go outside, do what you got to do. Except the people of the theater are going to be. We're just going to be still confused. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm hoping, like we all are.
Yeah, because I did an improv event through Zoom, and I remember it just. I mean, it was fun, but it just wasn't the same because it didn't. It was harder to immerse myself in the scene doing it over Zoom because you're not. There's not the physicality as much like being there. Yeah.
Yeah, the guys I play with, this group Centralia Improv, we haven't done anything over Zoom because we not all of us have to be in, and some of us don't particularly enjoy it. And that was started early. I've done a couple of shows here and there in the beginning, but I don't really perform much now. I'm doing a podcast. I mean, I'm doing a written thing, and I've done a couple of readings of plays.
Yeah. So
And,
just keeping the creative juices flowing as much as you can.
as much as I can. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How about you? How you doing?
I mean, I've been looking into voice acting and stuff. I mean, I always had an interest with that, but now, like, it's really cool because I was able to voice 2 characters for a project in Chicago without having to physically be there. And
Yeah.
I did another voice acting, so that, and I took a voice acting class to learn some more things too. But that seems to be something that's still thriving, is voiceover and voice acting.
Yeah, now would be a good time to get into voice acting and book reading, that kind of stuff. And yeah.
And writing too. I've been doing like
writing.
Yeah. Revising an old screenplay I worked in that I'm working on. Another project with my friend Eric, doing a kind of comedic script. And I hope to shoot both of them. I hope to shoot like once things are a little bit more open. But I think some things are starting to shoot, because I did do one reenactment series recently right here in New Jersey. I haven't really been going into the city as much since the pandemic because I'm in New Jersey. I mean, I know some people have, but I know it's like things aren't as open as much. Like it's not. I know it's different going in.
It feels like, I mean, right now, especially because it's like almost 70 degrees, it feels very open. I just moved into Lower Manhattan. I was living in the Bronx, and I was living in Inwood before that in the past year. But now being down here, it feels much more alive than it did last year, that's for sure. When we were at just the beginning of lockdown. Hopefully it'll stay that way. I know last summer it started to feel a little bit like this, like people were going out, and it's weird for me because my work still from home, and there's no theater to go to.
Yeah, it seems like for artists, like that's one group. It's still like the hardest for, like, because I feel like there's less they can do now. As far as a social thing, there's only solitary things. But like I said, they're still doing some shoots and stuff like that, like around here with the reenactments where I got to play the robber, and I got to play.
People are shooting. People are shooting. Yeah, they're starting to shoot for sure. Yeah.
But just like with a lot more precautions and everything.
Yeah, they have to take the test and temperature checks and all that. But I'm sure people are being lazy about it. I mean, I just got my first shot, so I don't know how that'll change things.
Yeah, I'm signed up for the alerts, but I haven't gotten anything about a appointment yet or anything.
I think it's like going to be probably a week or two before everybody can get an appointment in New York.
Yeah. Oh, it was because you're an educator, I guess, was the reason, or?
I guess, yeah. I got a thing from my doctor saying I was eligible, and I went up in Harlem and got one done.
Yeah, I might be because of they recently said I have bronchial asthma, which I guess is like a allergy connected to allergies, the asthma. But I thought it was weird that they discovered that would only pop up later in life. But I don't know. I always had certain times where I felt short of breath, but I always thought that people knew they had asthma earlier on. So
yeah, maybe you had bronchitis once, and now you've got this thing that makes you eligible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's all kind. I guess it varies on the different conditions with that and all that.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, it was very. Now I was turned down the first time because I knew a person that helped me helped me figure out how to make an appointment. I made an appointment, but I didn't read the eligibility stuff. I just kind of showed up, and they were like, no. And then I went again after I'd gotten an email from my doctor, and I got it.
So you talked about having the wild, like wanting a wild life at one point, and then I know you said in class you went the other way with sobriety and
Yeah, I got
being
sober
Yeah.
about a little over 7 years ago. Yeah, but I had a real drug and alcohol problem for many years.
And so that just being around performing and the comedy shows and theater, or
I don't know. I mean, there's so many people in recovery that I mean, early on I probably thought that, but now that I'm in recovery, I know lots of different professions that believe lawyers, every community can find their alcoholics and addicts. Some people can do it and it doesn't attach themselves. Some people can't. Like for me, I think it's very genetic, and it just became. It's more than drinking too much. It becomes after a little time you start working on yourself or myself, and there's like other issues that reveal themselves, and you start having to take care of yourself in a different way. At least that's been my experience.
so the alcohol can be used to sort of hide, so you don't have to look at certain issues in yourself
Right, like
that you don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
depression or anxiety or trauma, a lot of trauma, childhood stuff that you don't want to remember or deal with, insecurities, a lot of very human stuff. But for me, it just like it was like a uncomfortability in my skin was part of it. How do I get comfortable? I felt very comfortable in my skin when I was using until it became a problem. And then it becomes that becomes a big question, how to find, how to not to get too angry, how to just sort of live at peace.
Yeah, but for me, in my experience with alcohol, it usually like brings out the worst in me. Like, but I become more. It just I don't know. Some people, I guess, it kind of it brings out their worst or their worst behavior. And I've just had so many negative
Yeah.
experiences with it. I just think what's the point of getting like that? So
Well, that's good. I mean, if you can just put the bottle down, that's definitely a way of doing it. When if you can have that clarity of like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, then to me or the people around me, then that's helpful. I find support groups to be helpful for me, so I can remember, especially how bad it was, because quarantine was hard. Quarantine was challenging for those of us in recovery. Or I shouldn't say for those of us. For me, I had a lot of drunk dreams. I had to really sort of do the thing we're not supposed to do, which was isolate a lot. It's hard to get around people, you know.
yeah,
So I would go to support group meetings over Zoom, which were helpful but different. Um, and I just need help. I need to stay like aligned in order for me to not pick up again. Because if I were to pick up again, I've seen too many examples of it not going well. I would pick up right where I left off, I believe, which was
oh,
crazy to know.
yeah. So there were
Yeah.
times you fell back into it and then had to get off again.
Not
Yeah.
in 7 years, no.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, it took me forever I think I probably quit for a couple of months, and then go back into it. But I never really understood that I had disease until I got into recovery. And now that I've been into recovery, I've been fortunate not to fall back into it. But I know a lot of people that do and then come back into recovery. You know.
And I remember for a while that most things weren't open, but liquor stores were open. So that must have been hard.
Yeah,
too.
the business
Yeah.
was thriving.
Yeah.
I think that business did better than just about any other business. The liquor business.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Delivery. And it was an essential, essential business. That's what they called it. Liquor
Yeah.
store.
Yeah, I guess I thought people needed a way to cope or something. I don't know. Yeah.
People do. If it's working for you, I say go for it. You can have one, if you can do it, do it. I can't do it, but good for you if you can.
Yeah. So has it been? Did it get you to find different ways to enjoy life or be social once you had to put the bottle down? Because I know a lot of times people go out to bars and stuff after shows. How did it affect? Like, did you have to find new ways to socialize and?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of social anxiety, which is part of my affliction or disease, and I had to be very careful and vigilant about the people I hung out with. But mostly, I found a getting back to the theater was great, performing was great, and I said yes to a lot of things. I was able to show up. I was able to be present. It wasn't interfering with my my professional life, which was everything to me. And then now I've had to deal with personal stuff, and that's been hard. But it's like growing up. It's like it's forcing me to grow up in a way that a lot of people my age don't make it.
So do you feel happier now without it?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I guess the wildlife is exciting for a while, but then I guess after a while, did you found it? Was it empty after a while, and then I guess you found more meaning in other things?
Yeah. 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 That's a great way to describe it. Yeah, the wild. I mean, I would, if I could, I'd still be living the wildlife. I'd be dead probably. I couldn't know any other way to live. It wasn't even a wild life. It wasn't a life. It was just, it was how can I get another drink? What bar are we going to? How can I get this drug? I don't want to leave. Wake up, party. I was all in. I was not in good shape.
And did your art or did acting help with any of getting out of that? Is it what?
Oh yeah. Well, once I was able to get my sort of chops back, which was slow, it took me about 2 years, and I was very fortunate to get back in touch with some people who allowed me to try improvising again. And I did some very small things over at what was called the Treehouse, which is now the Pit Loft. And then I sort of worked my way back in, and that took a couple of years. And then I started teaching at the Pit about 5 years ago, and now I feel like I'm a better performer than I ever was.
So did you get into performing and improv because of social anxiety as well? Because you mentioned that's part of what influenced the.
Probably, you get that first laugh in a room, and suddenly you feel accepted. I know I did, like in 5th grade, going to a new school and then making the whole room laugh. Feels pretty good. That helps because that made me feel like I had something to offer. But social anxiety in general, if I'm at, a crowded party, I want to get out. I don't want to be there. So that's tricky when you put down the drink. You have to learn how to negotiate that sort of way of living.
Yeah, and I guess it's a way to kind of escape your inhibitions go away. That's what it is. You're just less. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's a social lubricant.
And for acting and improv, sometimes the social anxiety goes away if you can become a different character because then it's not you. As
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
way I used to think of it. But now I'm like all about me. Like I want to. Yeah. When I was a younger actor, I was like interested in like the method and how I can become the other person. Now I'm just like doing sides of me, which is less angsty for me as a performer. I like to relax into whatever I'm doing rather than, you know,
yeah. Right. So just kind of being yourself in the role, sort of.
being sides of myself. Like what part of this is me? Yeah. I believe there's nobody else playing the part. So ultimately, I mean, I think there
Yeah.
was a period where I would try to get as methody as I could as a young actor. Now I just try and find make it as personal as I can.
Yeah. Well, I guess it also depends what character you're playing. I guess certain ones, if it's from a different, but even if it's from a different time period or a different character than you can. There's always a universal human thing you can relate to. Like there's certain emotions that everybody goes through, no matter what walk of life they come from. And I guess you
Yeah,
could always connect to that, even if you can't relate to the character on other things.
you can always connect to falling in love or wanting to rob someone or most of the themes are always
Yeah,
they're not like this is out of my I'm older, I can connect. I work with a lot of young actors and they have to do more work because I know I've been through a lot. So it feels like I can connect to it a little quicker. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. There's some
yeah.
remarkable young actors out there that I'm just like, wow,
Well, it
how do they
depends on
do
that.
it?
It depends on. I mean, because you could be an older person that hasn't done that experience that much. And you could be a younger person who's been through a lot. So it depends on the person too, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of acting approaches encourage using the imagination, and I like to use truth as often as I can. Um, and for some actors, imagination works. It doesn't really know what the mystery is to good acting. I don't really know the answer, but I do know that
Hmm.
it's just different ways of trying to figure out how to connect to the material.
But do you think someone could find truth in imagination? Imagine something and kind of find a truth in that, and then connect.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine people. I imagine. I'm sure people would say that's exactly what acting is. Just pretend. I mean, when I improvise, I'm imagining worlds and scenarios, and so it's a big part of it, the imagination. I mean, the imagination is probably why I'm an actor in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of tapping into that playful energy that as a kid when you're using your imagination. It's still yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely why I'm an improviser. Yeah.
And is there anything, because I guess you mentioned going more towards truth with acting. Is there anything else that is there any ways that your acting has changed aside from that, or your improv has changed, or anything you've learned aside from just changing from using your imagination method acting to using your own truth?
Um. Yeah, I would just say in general, I'm less interested in what someone else may think of my work and more aware of whether or not I'm true in a moment. Less dependent on someone else saying that was great. Although all actors, I don't care how amazing or cool you are, I believe every actor wants to hear that was great after a show. Every one of us do. Because we want to feel like we affected people, which is why we do it. We want to affect people. It's not just for me. But I also don't feel dependent upon, I feel like if I have a pretty clear sense of whether or not I'm being truthful, honest. And that I think comes from sobriety.
Just because it just gives you more of a clear head, I guess, just because you're more yourself, maybe.
Yeah, and I have a clearer access to my emotional life.
Or you're not using something to run away from it, like before.
Right. I don't have, now I can grab it all. I have it all at my disposal. I'm much more open.
So do you have
Yeah.
any advice for other performers or actors,
Don't
especially
drink. Don't do
during
drugs. Don't do it. That would be number one, because you want, if you want to have clear, if you want to be vulnerable, and if you want to be treated professionally, then don't do those things before you perform. Especially, I think comics and improvisers, it's become so. It's like who are we there for? The bar, or the audience? And some of us, we get, comics, the bar will take care of us. So we get used to that unprofessional life of not being paid, because we're willing to get paid by the bar when the bar should be paying us. But we need to behave professionally. We don't want free drinks. We want, money. So it's a beast that I think has gotten a little out of control. I know the people when I was a kid I admired were all like big drinkers, partiers. And that was certainly the scene when I moved to Chicago in the beginning.
For theater or improv,
And
or
it
both?
was fun. It was fun. For both, really. Yeah, I mean, improv especially, but and I had a great time, and a lot of people had a great time, and they didn't get as all fucked up as I did. And some people can still party. I'm always like, wow, good for you. So I don't know. I mean, it was definitely fun. For someone that gravitated or has the disease of alcoholism, it was very appealing. But I could have found it if I was an accountant.
Oh, the alcoholism. Yeah. So
Oh yeah, I would have
yeah.
found my way in. Yeah.
So do you think there's people that can be around that but not get sucked into it, or?
Yeah. I mean, I know there are. I've seen it. I've seen people intentionally stay away from it. I've seen people just sort of hang out and leave. Yeah, I'm sure you have too. People that, yeah.
Yeah, they just kind of, I guess they take care of the other people who are drunk and getting
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Keep them in line or drive them home or what. Well, not drive, probably not as much of that in the city, people driving people home. But yeah.
No, I grew up in New York City, so it was a good town to, I didn't get a driver's license until I was 24. So I was very lucky I avoided the driving thing. That would have been a problem.
Yeah.
And it did become a problem later. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, because I guess when you're drunk, sometimes it's hard to think because you know you don't want to drive drunk, but then if you had a few, then you're not thinking about like, oh, I'm good, and then
It's
yeah,
just so stupid. It's like so stupid.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. Yeah.
So is there anything else maybe we didn't cover, and maybe any final thoughts you'd like to say?
No, I mean, I just thank you for having me do this. I didn't know it was going to be on like where our faces were going to be shown
Yeah, it's I've been
over the
doing that more
stage.
recently. Yeah, adding the
That's
videos because
cool.
I can do that with Zoom. I think that adds a lot. People can see the people talking, and it helps me work on my body language, and if I can see myself talking too. So
Yeah, I'm nervous to see myself. I haven't seen myself do anything uh in in a long time. So I feel like I think.
Friday afternoon.
Oh, there's Alexa.
Celebrate the start of the weekend with your Alexa routine.
I guess Alexa's joining the show too.
Alexa's excited.
Yeah.
But thank you, Sean. It's good to see you.
Oh yeah, good to see you. Good to catch up because I think the last time I saw you was just before the quarantine because I was about to do I was doing the improv level 2 class with you, and then it was right before we were going to do the show that this whole quarantine happened.
Wow.
And I think
Yeah.
that the one of the last times I was in the city was to do your class, and it was only like 4 people because everybody else was scared of COVID.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
people were starting to get the memo.
Yeah.
It was like the corporate people, especially. Like suddenly, like nobody was there. Like we were having classes and nobody was showing up. It was like people got the memo a month before we did, or at least before I did, because I was in a show that opened, and then we did like 3 performances, and I was on my way down to do another performance, and I knew this woman that had been to China, and she was texting me on the train saying, "Get off the train. Do not do that show." And we were all confused. So I showed up, and we ended up doing the show that night. And there was an audience and everything. But immediately afterwards, everything shut down. That was the night they announced Broadway was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And now here we are a year later.
yeah, that's why I like when they say things are when I'm gonna wait till things actually do open up to like be happy about like now things. Well, I mean we didn't have the vaccine before, so the
Right.
vaccine is
That's the
something new.
one factor. But we're still, I mean, New York right now, we're okay. But outside of New York, it's still tricky. We still get a lot of tourists here. And we've got these weird strains, and the numbers are still very high. So, God help us. We can keep this up.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not too long, and then it would be back to more in person. I mean, Zoom's not too bad, but I think it's Zoom.
No,
I like the Zoom for interviews. I think I'm gonna keep
yeah,
doing that because
you can
then I can
interview.
have the video and yeah, I can interview whoever pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And is there a way people can keep updated with anything you're doing?
yeah. You can follow me. You can go to my website, patmccartney.com. You can follow me on Insta at the Patrick Mac, PatrickMac. Otherwise, it's patmccartney.com website. I teach at the Pit, People's Improv Theater, and right now we just teach remotely. I teach improv, all the levels, mostly the higher levels, 4 and 5. I have a 4 coming up at the end of March. I teach acting at thepit.com, at the Pit NYC, and I have a podcast coming out written by a comic named Nikki McCollum, based on her story. and that's called Dry Run. And you can hear me at the Centralia Improv podcast, where that's the improv group I work with. We interview people, we do a lot of things.
Oh, so you have your own kind of BSing show? Like,
Yeah.
You do. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's with me and 3 other guys. So I've interviewed a few people. I did an interview with the actress Kate Walsh, which is really interesting.
Okay.
And 2 other Chicago. Anyway, that's at the Centralia Improv podcast.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks again for coming on. And if those of you want to keep updated with BSing with Sean K on Spotify, iTunes, BS 'ING with SEANK. And that's because there's 2 ways of spelling Sean. And you could also look up SEANKNEESE. That's how you spell my name. It doesn't, because Kneese, it's a silent K, on social media and also Instagram. I post some of my podcast stuff there, as well as like my acting or other things I'm working on. And yeah, that's about it for this episode. I'll catch you on the next one.
BSing with who?